I was hoping that I could introduce you to the concept today. Would that be all right? So I'm going to, I've prepared some menus to take through some of your ethical shopping options. So if you can kind of pass those around. Make sure we have enough. It's really wonderful to have you all here today in the shop. So WILBY, I'm not sure if you know, it stands for What I Live By. And I see this as the evolution or a positive evolution of consumption or just Okay, do we all have one? Yep. Okay. So, a lot of things that we learn in school, or there's things that we experience in an art installation or in an art environment. There's things that sort of speak to us in a spiritual environment. And then suddenly we walk into a moment of consumption, and we are vulnerable targets of so much intelligence that targets like all those chemicals and all those histories of want, need, branding, right? All of that. And so often there are things that we learn and we know that we stand in that we abandon in that moment. And so I created a space to kind of practice what it's like to slow down, consume more mindfully, and apply those things that really matter to you in that moment of consumption. And so in order to explore that, I created a tote bag in 5 different ethical considerations so that we can start to feel our way through what your ethical style is and not just look at your aesthetic or your price point, but start to look at the overall style that represents you. So if any of you were to walk out of here with a tote today, or something like a tote, you would also be investing in your values, and you'd be representing that. And so you'd be carrying something that carried meaning for you, and it carried that conversation and what was important. So if you look at our first option, we have the factory bag. $8. All I know about it is it's sourced from Pakistan. I don't know anything about the conditions in which it was made. I don't know anything about the material. It's 12-ounce cotton. But it's a great replacement for your, and it's a classic replacement for your plastic bags. Now in that exact bag, so same 12-ounce cotton, it's made in New York. I don't know anything else about the condition of the material. The material was bought here in the garment center. The difference is it has a lining, which I'll speak to in a bit. This is sort of some of the lining. That was printed in Brooklyn, but it was sewn here, essentially the same thing. That goes up to $70. Okay? So you can start to see that jump to carry your groceries in something that supports the local economy. This bag here, a wonder, I love it, is actually just created yesterday by Isabella Scott, who is our resident designer at the WILBY studio. I see a photo of her at work there. And I'll get to the space that you can visit in a minute. And this one is what we like to call our custom bag. So you can collaborate with Isabella and have a big, small, if you want one of these guys with pockets, we have someone that brought in an old dress to upcycle material. And that can, so that if you're creating something, you're both connected to it in the making of it, and to your hands and her hands together with it. And also it carries, even the material can carry your ethic with it. Okay, so we have a custom bag here. And that we start at $60. And that's been like, the price point of that I'll talk about if you're curious, but like, this has been a really tough one for us of like, how do you determine what labor costs in front of someone? It's been a fun learning experience. Right over here we have what I like to call the do-gooder bag. It's made in Cambodia by former sex traffic victims. We're collaborating with an organization called the NOE Network, and it's made out of recycled rice bags. And that helps create a financial viable opportunity for them to get reintegrated into life. And that one's $35. And then we have our last option, which is I don't need another fucking bag. And with that one, you can either get a tag, you can have a stamp, a fabric stamp, which you can kind of customize what's on it. We also have a screen that we can foil for you on your bag. And the idea behind that one is no matter how ecological, your choice is, the best thing we can do is slow down and buy less. there is a massive pile of garbage growing in the middle of the ocean. And even those eco-totes still are contributing to it. They're still creating waste. And so one of the things that I really encourage is that you can take a conversation with you. You can take a reminder to yourself and those around you that you slowed down, that you didn't buy, that we need to honor what we have. And you know, that we suggest a donation of $7. Now, if you flip your menu over to the back, I like to draw people's attention to the numbers at the bottom here. And so you'll see three costs here. There's a base cost, there's a price, and there's a suggested retail price. So I've been talking about the price because I am fortunate enough to be hosted by the White Hotel as an artist. That's the space they've given me. So they usually do sort of regular pop-up stores. They've hosted me kind of to have an interesting interaction with their guests, and it has been interesting. And so I'm able to charge this price, this one in the middle. And what I'm trying to show people is, if you want things cheaper, it doesn't come out of this markup. The designer markup is fixed, and so is the retail. That's the way our economy is structured. So the designer has their overhead of hiring people, branding, distribution, all of that messaging that seems so important. And then the retail price, the retail outlet has their overhead of paying rent to the bank and whatever it is that they do. But so those two markups are fixed. When you want things cheaper, it's going to just come out of your base cost. And when you want the base cost lower, it's going to come out of one of those steps along the way. So it's either going to cost the environment more, or it's going to cost human labor more, right? And something there is going to bring that price down. And what I like to encourage people, as you browse what is the right tote or what is your ethical style, to really go through each of these and to start to get into the practice of thinking about overall cost. What is the overall cost of this bag? And to also be mindful, and that's sort of what brings me to the lining and why this was important. And I'll talk about the evolution of the lining. But it was important for me that will be, or what I live by, is no one thing. I think a lot of us feel like, okay, are you eco or not? But, you know, Amy, we can't all be you. You know, I mean, your dedication, I think, like, to do a year-long project really highlights, like, yeah, to do it for a year, all of a sudden becomes a project. You know, like, that's how integrated into our lives. Like, that's how much we're targets to so much of an industry of branding and marketing and shopping, right? So to take that on is really, you all of a sudden become a political statement. And that's, you know, that's great. But what I live by is also a fluidity and permission to be fluid. So sometimes what I live by is being mindful of my financial resources. I only have $8. I don't want to use a plastic bag. This is what I can afford. This is what I'm going to get. And that's okay. And sometimes what I live by is I have a bit more money. I want to support my local economy, and I'm going to get this bag. And it's made in New York, and it supports things I believe in. Sometimes I want to, ooh, there you go, fluid like the river. Sometimes I want to, what I live by, and if it was still up, you can see, it's what I live by is helping others. And I want to connect with women who are in unfortunate situations, and I want to buy things that are connected with their opportunities. And sometimes what I live by is mindfulness and slowing down, and just caring for myself and not buying into anything other than my truth. And so that fluidity is also kind of what I'm after. How do we create a community that allows you to express yourself and to keep expressing yourself differently, and that we look at consumption choices as a creative act. As you buy, you are creating possibilities or stopping possibilities. And that, you know, it's like, how do we remember that we are valuable, that our values actually create what is available to us, and that we really are participating in that way. So what I wanted to do with the time that I have here, and then, you know, I have some slides to talk about the origin of the idea or what inspires me and things like that, but I would really love it. Right now, I'm actually in the middle of an installation, and I'll give these out after. So the wife, as I mentioned, is hosting me from April 10th until, March 10th until April 7th. So I'm in it right now, like, woo, woo, woo. And with all of you people who are here at such a important and, you know, it's like the mindful conference, in this, I'll sort of speak a bias for a moment, but like, one of the things I explain to people is, I've made this idea vulnerable to the marketplace because I believe that a community can come together around this expression, we can buy into this idea of our own value and we can share it with others. So for now, it's really self-funded. And when I go through with people, I was like, well, this auction, and it's a suggested donation, and carrying that message is a way to like move it out into the world and keep this going. And I have people, a classic reaction is sort of like, I'm curious about your reactions here. That's a lot of reactions, but it's people will like move through it and then just like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, yeah, it's really vulnerable to like your support, and be like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And like we'll be nodding, and I'll be like, I gotta go get lunch. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I mean, and it's been amazing things. And actually, if you show the next slide, I just want to show you one, which I feel is like the reason I'm doing this. Not for my photography capability, but that's Barry. Barry came in. He was staying in the hotel. He's an older British gentleman. I took him through it. He looks at me and he said, and like I will not even try his accent, but he said, for 40 years I've been buying gifts for my wife. I've never been able to explain to her why I'm getting what I'm getting for her. And so he chose the Made in USA, and he liked the lining, and he liked the story, and he liked supporting, things. And he's like, finally, I can explain it to her. And you have these stories where someone will take the menu, go have lunch, and then come back and be like, I don't need another fucking bag, or like there's a woman with like a Prada bag. Oh, it's like, you hear it, but then when someone actually gets it, like, yes, let me participate, let me carry this, let me support this, let me invest in this idea. And in this community, it's like, oh, thank you. So that's really great. And so I was curious about like tapping into, the wisdom in the room. If curious how the idea resonates, and then also suggestions, ideas, and then please come out and help me reiterate it in the space itself. But if we could take 10 minutes, I don't know if anyone has thoughts. Help me. Like to do this in a way that creates that community of change, where we're together knowing how important our consumption choices are in affecting the world we want to see. Yeah.
So I'm a senior at Pratt & Fashion, and I do sustainable design. And it's interesting thinking about our approach constantly when you're designing and when you're taught is, who's going to buy it? That's like the first, how is it designed? But I'm interested to see how this gets brought into the industry when we're constantly told, you need to design and sell. And this idea of like companies like Patagonia, who are more about making a quality product that actually lasts, as opposed to just the fast fashion of pump it out, have them buy it. I think it's interesting, the idea of actually talking to the people who are pushing the idea of making money all the time for design.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when someone comes in and they're in fashion, they're like, oh, thank you for breaking this down.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, and one of the reasons that this is a tote bag is my background's also in international development, and, lots of that perspective goes into this perspective. And, it's like I wanted to come back and for another project make a tote bag, and to make it according to my ethics, this tote bag, like super simple, was going to have to sell in stores for $400. Just if I went all the way down my checklist. I was like, no, that's offensive to another one of my ethics, which is like access, right? And so that conflict, and then all of a sudden I became very sympathetic to designers who are coming out, and there's this point, like if you want to make something and see what you've made in the world, that's in conflict with, all of these things you're also taught to care about. So I think there's a lot of I'm meeting a lot of designers at a sustainable programs that come out and they're just like, there's nothing for us to do.
Yeah.
And so, I think we're in this really, really special time of opening where we have a chance, and and I see with this idea, in my mind, these tags were flying off the shelf, right? Like, of course, you know, because you get to that moment and people will laugh and they'll pause, be like, oh yeah, like, and it reminds them. And the other thing that's happening is like, I am disrupting, especially in that, in that hotel space. I'm disrupting a normal flow, and that was something like I wasn't prepared for, like the White Hotel and all the expectations that move through there in Williamsburg and in this sort of presence. And so I'm coming in and I'm saying, hi, can I introduce you to a concept, which I learned I had to ask. You know, it's like, right, the word concept also like provokes people in different ways. And so that idea, and then you have this moment with someone, and so, you know, in my dream world where I enjoy spending a lot of my time, our education and reality are like really having this fun conversation, and you know, when someone sees this new opportunity to take the silo down, they're like, woohoo! And you know, one of the things I like to say, and the other piece of this is in the store, and I don't know if you can see it from these pictures, but the other half of the store is dedicated to other designers. And it ranges from, actually you can go forward, next slide, one more. One more. There we go. See, I'm kind of prepared. So these are just some other products that we're carrying. So this is a collaboration between the Brooklyn Fashion Design Accelerator, which I'm so fortunate that they trusted me. Hooray for trust. They invited, we did an event last night, which was just like so special to have them bring their designers into this concept of mindfulness. And you know, it's like, for me, my background is definitely not in retail, so to be dealing with customers in retail and then to be able to give them that feedback, like, it's really amazing. So I'll explain how these products are in there. What I did was, I had this opportunity in this store, I wanted to extend it to other makers, and so different makers who have a strong ethic, and the ethics range. They each have shelves. So, you know, this is a scarf that's made in Mongolia from women that creates a financial opportunity for them. Those are bracelets that are made by a local jewelry designer. These are bracelets that I'm wearing made in Colombia by women and children as part of a ceremonial tradition. And so, you know, all of this was a way of saying, like, each person has a card that says what they live by. And so I asked people to browse by more than price and style, but look at the ethic that goes into it. And that was really, it's a challenging piece, because I would finish this, and actually if you go back 2 slides. So I would finish this, and what I was coming from was doing this exclusively as an art installation. So it was just the PopUp Ethical Sweatshop. The lining of the bag was the menu, and I highlighted the choice you were making. It's really clear. So this was at the time it was called It's Complicated. Half was made overseas, half was made here. This was the local, or what we would call a Made in USA bag, and that was highlighted. And so the choice you were making and the message was sort of clear. And the reason that I expanded it to Will Be What I Live By is because, to me, this is not just like a punchy, provocative idea. I think there's a lot of awareness now, you know, given what happened in Bangladesh and the media attention that finally was given to those conditions and to the way that things are made. I think that's creeping into consciousness. But that idea of being able to express what you live by and the value of what you live by in each consumption choice you're making, you know, it's really humbling to see how foreign that practice is to people. You know, and there's a lot of people that are coming through at pretty impressive socioeconomic brackets that I'm certain give quite a bit to charity. But that idea that your charity and what you value can come together in the things that you buy. We don't need anymore to separate those two ideas. We can actually bring them together and change the possibilities without having that hierarchy of sort of, you know, well, we all know. I'm not going to say it. So, so it's you know, it's like, how do we start participating together? And I think we participate together in understanding that these choices, you know, are part of a larger fabric of the world, that we're affecting each other. And you know, and then like the metaphors kind of like spin out of there, but that fabric that we're sharing in. Yeah, I don't know. Any question? Yeah.
My interest would be in how do you scale this idea? If the object is to start a conversation on this issue with the most people possible, and one of the ethics you're trying to, or one of the ethical notions you're trying to put forward is access. Like when I look at these, when I look at the options, I see the first one is $8, right? And the second one is 35. So you're talking about like a 4.5x jump. And in terms of who can represent that and how many people are going to get into that type of discussion and the sort of distribution of incomes in the country.
Absolutely.
Personally, I would be interested in seeing more gradations to get more people into the operation.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's, so yes, I totally agree. And one of the things that I'm very humbled by, I mean, I like to call it the like single working mother who has 3 jobs and kids to feed it. You know, it's like pile, and it's like, I am humbled by her story and what she's doing. And then that's what I mean, like the way that the economy is structured, I don't want anyone to feel not only not badly for that, but that they can't do that. And so I did that. This one over here was done in Texas, Nacogdoches, kind of East Texas. I've never been there or heard of it before, and really on Main Street. And what was interesting there was, you know, because this was a cleaner experiment where I wasn't looking at other products, and that's again, like I will be reiterating it. There will be collaborations, but it'll be cleaner. Like having other things to browse lets people off the hook in their internal shopping moment of like, you know, where's your ethical heart? And so here what happened is the most popular bag was actually this one. And people can kind of, like when this idea resonates with someone, they're like, yes, my church group does that, or I need to help others, and this makes sense, and it's an attractive enough tote, and you know, that works. In New York, when I did it, everyone thought we would go through these options, and they're like, oh, this is about Made in USA. Like I said, did in the garment, oh, so this is about Made in USA. And you know, so you can see that. What was interesting there was that the homemade version was recalling for them something that they felt they wanted to get away from. That what fast fashion does there, instead of like going to hand-me-downs or Salvation Army, is it's actually like, you know, it's like when you think about the industrial age, right, and that access to like buying new things, it's actually a sign of status and class and excitement, and that is what branding is tapping into, you know, that evolution. And so, you know, and I'll get back to your point in a minute, but one thing you reminded me to sort of mention was this is just a, you know, anyone who's in the industry at all, in any aspects of this industry will know this is just kind of touching a very, very, very surface of a surface. I mean, when I was deciding this, it was like, oh, I don't know, you know, like everything could be going, you know, and also, you know, the other thing is I was trying to show known versus unknown, because it's like, how can we know, like, things that we know more about how they're made? And so, you know, it's like, yeah, I mean, the layers of how to access people and what information to give them that's overwhelming, and what's information, like, where's this first step? And in what market are you speaking? And that sort of speaks to the design question. So also designing an installation to speak to its audience. Like if in the audience that I'm at this space, these all could have been, this is 400, this is 1,000, this is, you know, a one-of-a-kind 100,000, you know, like you can't afford this. And there's, it depends. And so then there's a place where you want to say this is $1, this is $2. And the reason this is important to me, sorry, I'm speaking around things, but it's stop me with the stretch. But the reason this is important to me is because the sort of charming aspect of it is also that it doesn't take a lot of money to take 2 tote bags that you had, cut them together, make something new, have it be exciting. Like there's got to be a way to speak to that market about meaning, you know. And I think the Taylor Project's really doing that. It's like, how do we speak to people? And you know, that brings me back to like that homemade version there was something no one wanted to get involved with. And that when I was talking about all the pieces that we didn't get into here, it's because the disintermediation between us and our things is so far that no one along the way knows everything. The buyer doesn't know anything, the maker doesn't, the person who grows the cotton, nobody knows everything. Like that is where our industrialization has gone, that no designer can, I mean, now there are thankfully like a few projects where people, but it's a project. You know, it's like when I wanted to make this $400 tote, one of the things that happened was I was like, okay, and then I had this, you know, big idea, this will be so easy. I'm going to put a map on the outside, and it's going to show people, you know, that's what this was supposed to be, a map. Like, I'm going to show people, like, here is Texas, here's where it went to, this is where it's milled, this is where it's spun, this is where, you know, it's like, this is, and I wanted to have 2 bags, and one was like, and inside the label was going to be like, you know, 400 women, 600 men, 3 children touch this bag, and that one cost $8. And then the one that was like 4 people, you know, whatever it is, like 4 women, 1 man touch this bag, and it costs $1,000. And I really wanted to show that, and for that bag to work, it had to have that integrity, so the map of the people. And it was like harder than tracing drugs. Like I really believe I could find like the source of cocaine more easily than this fabric. I mean, and I spoke to, I mean, I lost months just trying to do that. And that's when I realized, like, you know what, there are some people doing that. You know, and then it's like, oh, make a documentary. And then, like, I finally got to the point where I went to hear, you know, in food, I think they're getting really good at it, like doing the investigative journalism and, you know, certainly Gil's doing amazing stuff about, you know, like knowing more, like that connection between known and why and what we're eating and the reason for that. So it's just taking that same thing, because we're also like, things are connected to crops in a lot of places, whether it's livestock or plants. And so it's, yeah, so it's like I went to go hear this, I forget what his name was, but it's like this food expert, and he had been, and he traced like the Dorito. And after I was like, oh, do you have any tips? And he's like, okay, you got to read the trade papers. You got to see if there's inconsistencies. And I was like, okay, like for this project, and also where, you know, it's like where I think I can contribute. I don't know that becoming an investigative journalist is it. And then, you know, there's that NPR Planet Money T-shirt. So I'm like, okay, great. Like, and that's what I mean by community. Like, we, not only that we can't do everything, we don't need to do everything. Like, we have each other. And that's actually exciting, and I'm kind of tired of having that taken away from me. And the reason that I sort of like got back on my horse and started beating my drum again and like did this was because if one more person told me, oh, well, people don't care. Oh, well, people don't care. And I was like, I am so tired of that message. I care. I'm a person. Everyone that I am friends with, that I cherish, cares. So that can't be true. And then when I sort of stepped out, like, oh, it's like the war against you. You know what I mean? It's like everyone in here, like even coming to this conference, taking the time out of your day, like you're engaging in a battle. And it is like, you know, whatever, I'm going for it. But yeah, it's like, it really is like a fight for life, like for the living. And so, you know, and to have compassion when you do it. And that's why, you know, what I talk about here with these margins, it's like, this isn't structured just because the man is evil and wants your money. Like, if I'm a retail outlet and I'm a small boutique and I have my family to support, I also have a loan to the bank. And that's why this chain that becomes so complex. Like, how do I discuss, you know, it's like when I was like known, unknown, and then I got to like, okay, like the retail outlet, like how much is known about where their money is going? And then Con Edison, I'm paying for electricity, and who owns that? And what, you know, it's like, I'm like, all right. So, you know, it's like to speak to that point and the design point and all of this, it will take others. Like, how will this grow? It will grow by like people coming in and saying, okay, yes, I have an idea for Walmart. And then we say, okay, great. What, you know, how should we do that? Is it like 50-cent differences? Because I think it does come down to that, right? Like when you're making things overseas, it's a pennies game. Like, am I paying, I don't know, $1.10 or $1.15? And that's, you know, again, with fast fashion, like that's your massive margin. Like that adds up. I don't really get yet how things add up. But
have you ever considered like supplemental purchasing? So say somebody can afford the $120 bag.
Right.
But the person that's a single mom with 3 jobs would like to purchase that bag because ethically it makes more sense,
Right.
but you can't. But what if somebody purchased a $120 bag and they
Before
could do
someone-
a supplemental purchase of
Yeah.
paying maybe another $10 where it could go into the pot for somebody that couldn't afford that bag to purchase it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'd be great. And the other thing that I would love is like, and I don't know that anyone has solved it well, but like that sliding scale.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird to look at someone and be like, well, for you, the cost is, you know, and like, it's like, there's an ethic to consistency, and
Yeah.
we have ideas about democracy that have been necessary to get to, it's like we have gender ideas that have been necessary to just get to a baseline of acknowledgement, like, you're human, I'm human, got it. And then beyond that, I think, you know, and that's, I think, about like the elevating together. Because beyond that, I think we know that, you know, and that's why when we look at this bag, and that sort of comes back to this moment, like, how much is your labor worth when you're sewing a bag together that's quite simple, but then you're, you know, and this one is not simple at all. You know, that sort of like takes a lot of schooling. So it's like, here's someone who is in debt to Parsons, like to the government, to some bank, right? Like to the bank, then the government, blah, blah, blah. And so to learn how to make this amazing thing that is now, you know, this is actually, just to tell the story of this one, the fabric, rip it down so you can see it. The fabric was made out of, we did a workshop. So the other thing I'm doing at the hotel is to host artists so that they can come in and share their craft, and people can actually meet more makers. So we are working with Arts and Parts. They're an organization that works with kids in Rockaway, and they came in and they did one day with kids in the hotel, and they made this. And they're actually having a benefit tonight, so check it out, Arts and Parts. So they're raising money so that kids in Rockaway can come to some summer camp for free. And this will be auctioned off there. It's a pencil bag, as you can see. And so, you know, it's like the labor and the construction is great. Like if Isabella's making a simple tote, who and what and custom, like, I don't know, charging is, pencils. Money is, I see like meaning, like it needs to have some kind of fluidity to it. And we have to be okay. You know, it's like, so I think that model would be great. And also this model would be great. Like, then we could offer more. And so I don't know if like anyone, you know, we don't have much time. But I don't know if anyone has ideas. Like, or if, yeah.
I would like to see the potential of having a skill share to teach someone who can't afford the really expensive bag but doesn't want to support the factory labor to sew their own bag.
Right.
In this case, a bag is relatively simple. So, I mean, you're probably not going to sew your own
No,
bag
exactly.
without a little bit more knowledge in your belt. But a simple project like this is something that people can kind of like, if they have access to a sewing machine.
Right, no, for sure. And one of the things, right, as we move forward, there'll be patterns. Like, you can just like to have the feeling of making something yourself.
Yeah, you should do a sliding scale bag.
A sliding scale. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
And just, because most people are pretty honest about what they can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and something where you cover your costs, but you can pay a bit more.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, one of the
And I'll
first.
take the profits.
Yeah, no, one of the first ideas for the pop-up sweatshop is I wanted to have people like sewing in front of you, and then you came in and you decided the price based on what you thought they made an hour, or like they deserved an hour. And so then you calculated it and you sort of showed someone. And so it's like, yeah, there's been a lot of play like when this was coming, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, the idea of having patterns, I mean, those would be so simple to make, and even having, you know, like twice a month a workshop, come in, learn how to sew this, learn what to look for if you're deconstructing, you know, an old shirt. You can make a pillowcase. What can you do? An old sheet. What can you make? And yeah, to have like a pattern, it would be so simple. And then you could just get seamstresses in the area. Even in San Francisco, they have the guy who tailors people's clothing, and then he just gets a donation.
Yeah.
And to have that anywhere, especially if we could do it, you know, have that pop-up would be so great, because that raises the awareness of you can mend your own clothing, like the Tailor Project, or make your own bag, make your own whatever from an old sheet, an old shirt.
Yeah,
That's-
no, absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you one thing that's been really also humbling about this. Like, I think that we all like, yeah. And then being there, I had a crafting table. So it was like, there's someone making something in the corner, and then there's me, and then there's like an area where you could, do something like this on your own. And what was amazing is like the most intimidating thing for people, like the idea of like markers or things. I mean, it was so